Hello, everyone, and welcome. For those tuning in for the first time, this is the podcast where we talk about personal finance, investing, career paths, and everyday life stories. This podcast is aired regularly every Saturday evening. In the previous two videos, we talked about the 15-60-25 rule and why your assets soar after the first 1 billion. With the milestone, according to that rule, you always need to keep 15% of your income for an emergency or contingency fund. This is the fund that helps you deal with risk in life. Charm must be highly liquid, so you can access it at any time. If it were real estate or stocks, you couldn't suggest sell them for cash because that might be when the market is down and you need to hold them long term for profit. They should keep your emergency fund to ensure high liquidity and protect it from inflation. 95% of people don't double what they're doing with their emergency fund. I'm certain that if you use it properly, you could literally become a dollar millionaire. So what criteria must an effective emergency fund meet? First, it must be large enough, usually at least 6 months of living expenses. If your job is unstable, it should cover 9 to 12 months. Why do I stress large enough? Because anything can happen in life. You might lose your job overnight, or your family may urgently need money for housing matters, or your child suddenly needs a large sum to enroll in an international school. If your emergency fund doesn't cover at least 6 months, you were in a financial crisis without realizing it. Second, it must be highly liquid, meaning you can withdraw money immediately without being stuck. For example, if you keep your emergency fund in a 1-month online savings account or even in an interest-bearing checking account, just a few clicks and the money is available. In contrast, if you put it into gold, real estate, or stocks, it's very hard to get quick cash. Gold requires finding a buyer and may face price spreads. Real estate definitely can be sold in a day or two. Stock can be sold instantly, but the risk of price loss is high and it takes 2 more days for the money to settle in your account. That's why an emergency fund must be kept somewhere highly liquid. So it's truly emergency. Third, it must be safe. The purpose isn't to earn high returns, but to preserve capital. In Vietnam, when you deposit savings at a commercial bank, that money is insured up to a certain level by the Deposit Insurance of Vietnam. And in practice, the state always has mechanisms to protect depositors. To date, there has never been a case where a commercial bank collapsed and people lost all their deposit. Even when a bank is weak, the government has plans for restructuring, merging, or transferring to safeguard customer interests. Meanwhile, if you put your emergency fund into corporate bonds, no insurance will protect you. The same goes for stocks. When the market fluctuates, you might lose 20 to 30% of your capital, and in an emergency, you can withdraw the amount you expected. Therefore, an emergency fund must provide absolute safety. Keep it in a reputable commercial bank, not in risky investments. This is also the topic I will dive deeper into later in this podcast. Fourth, it must be separate. Or emergency fund should be in a dedicated account or compartment, not mixed with spending or investment money. Some common mistakes people make include mixing it with monthly expenses. Salary comes in and the emergency fund sits there too by months, and you don't even realize you've spent part of it, and when needed, it's not enough, or using it for investment rotation. So seeing an opportunity in stocks, crypto, or real estate, then pulling out your emergency fund to invest, thinking you make it up later. But when the market drops, you lose not only your capital but also your safety cushion. And finally, consistency. You must treat your emergency fund as a fixed monthly expense each month. Set aside a portion of your salary, maybe 5 or 10% until the fund reaches 3 to 6 months of living expenses. If you have to use the fund, then gradually replenish it afterward, like recharging your safety cushion. This mindset is similar to long-term investing. Warren Buffett once said, "Do not save what is left after spending, but spend what is left after saving." He also said, "The best thing you can do is be patient." This, the wonderful companion of an investor. An emergency fund is the same. It's not a one-time plan, but the long-term habit, consistently saving so that no matter what unexpected events occur, you always have a protective cushion. So we now have the 5 criteria of an emergency fund: large enough, highly liquid, disaster-past, safe, consistent. Today, most people deposit all their savings into a single account, choosing the longest term possible for higher interest. Does this sound familiar? I'm sure 90% of those listening right now do the same. It may sound reasonable, but this method carries many risks. First, the risk of lost capital. If you urgently need money, i.e., medical costs, home or car repairs, you are forced to withdraw early. And when you withdraw early, you almost only get non-term interest, usually less than 1% per year, logging almost all the profit. Second, a lack of flexibility. When you put a lump sum into a 24-month term deposits, 2 years, you will not have any money maturing in between, so rotate it. And two, that many commercial banks now allow you to receive interest monthly, but this usually comes with lower rates than receiving it all at the end. That means you can withdraw interest regularly, but at the cost of reduced profit. Third, you may miss new interest rate opportunities. Bank interest rates change over time. If you deposit for 2 years at 5.5% and just a few months later, the bank raises it to 6.5%, you are locked in at the lower rate and miss out on that growth. For these reasons, depositing in one lump sum, while simple, makes you more passive and vulnerable. In comparison, the method I'm about to share is using as a term deposit ladder. It gives you flexibility, optimizes long-term interest, and most importantly, you don't sacrifice returns just to have monthly cash flow. Simply put, this is saving across multiple terms, like steps, instead of putting it all into one account. The deposit ladder method actually originated in the US. Its English name is the CD ladder. DD stands for Certificate of Deposit, which is equivalent to a term savings account in Vietnam. This ladder idea became popular in US financial circles decades ago, mainly to solve one issue. Putting all money in a long-term CD earns higher interest, but locks up capital. Putting it all in short-term CS gives flexibility but low interest. The CD ladder was created as a balance strategy, dividing money into kits with different maturities to benefit from higher long-term rates while keeping short-term flexibility. Later, as personal finance spread, this strategy was applied not only to CDs but also adapted for other areas such as bond ladder or in Vietnam, savings deposit ladder. In other words, this method originated in the US under the name CD ladder. But in Vietnam, you can simply think of it as saving through multiple step-like accounts. Here is an example. Instead of depositing 400 million into a single 12-month account, you can split it 100 million for 3 months, 100 million for 6 months, 100 million for 9 months, and 100 million for 12 months. When the 3 month matures, you can withdraw or, if not needed, reinvest it into a 12 month. When the 6 month matures, you have another sum and reinvest it for 12 months, and over time, all the accounts in your row become 12-month accounts, but you still get money every 3 months instead of waiting a whole year. If you want even more regularity, you can create a ladder of 12 small accounts, each staggered by 1 month. This way, something matures every month, like a steady income. What are the benefits of this? First, you're not locked into one long-term account. Therein, always a short-term maturing for second after a few years. All accounts rotate into long terms, earning higher interest, while you still keep short-term flexibility. This is especially useful when bank rates trend upward. At that time, building a deposit ladder lets you benefit from high rates while keeping rolling cash flow. However, there is, if bank rates fall, splitting into smaller accounts may force you invest at low risk. For example, today you deposit a 12-month at 6% per year, but 3 months later the bank lowers it to 5%. Clearly that is worse than putting everything at 6% from the start. The problem is no one can predict for sure what rates will be in 3 or 6 months. That's why a deposit ladder is a balanced solution, decent rates, flexibility, and reduced risk compared to lump sum saving. What we savers usually do is watch the interest rates that local commercial banks are offering. For example, recently, when inflation was rising, many banks simultaneously raised savings rates to attract deposits. That is why you saw 12 to 24-month rates reaching 7 to 8% per year. In such a context, many prefer using deposit ladders rather than lump sum long-term saving. Why? Because they believe rates may keep rising, and splitting into smaller accounts lets them capture new rates when reinvesting. However, therein another risk: if rates reverse downward, each reinvestment gets you less. In that case, locking into a high long-term rate from the start would be better. Additionally, when building a ladder, you still need to pick terms that fit your capacity. If you are not sure you can hold a 12-month until maturity, you can start with shorter terms like 6 or 9 months, even though banks allow early withdrawal. If you withdraw midway, you will only receive the non-term interest rate around 0.5 to 1% per year, which is a big loss. In other words, a deposit ladder reduces the risk of locked capital compared to lump sum saving, but you still need to choose terms that fit your actual needs. Imagine Nam Bao, 25-year-old office worker with a modest income of about 25 million Vietnamese dong per month. Instead of spending it all, he tells himself he must set aside something for the future. So he disciplines himself, setting aside 15 million each month into a 12-month savings account at an average 5% annual interest. Nam keeps this habit for 15 years straight. Whenever a deposit matures, he reinvests the full principal plus interest into a new 12-month account. And of course, each month he adds another 15 million. By the time he turns 40, Nam's life has changed a lot. He feels his health is no longer as strong, and the constant KPIs and deadlines at work start to wear him out. More importantly, he wants more time for his family, his wife, and his school-age children. This is when Nam looks back after 15 years of discipline. His total contribution, 2.7 billion Vietnamese dong of principal. Thanks to continuous reinvestment, the savings has grown to over 4.2 billion Vietnamese dong, a 55% from the start, and especially from the 16th year onward. Nam begins to receive a steady cash flow, an average of 340 million Vietnamese dong per month from maturing accounts. You did not mishear, 340 million per month. That is more than a director trans salary just by discipline and compound interest. Pause for a moment. 340 million every month, steady and safe without worrying about market ups and downs. If his family only needs 20 to 30 million per month for living expenses, he could easily sustain it for years. With this cash flow, Nam can reduce his workload, choose lighter projects, and spend more time with family. He could even quit his office job to pursue a balanced, comfortable life. All Nam did was discipline himself 15 million each month for 15 years. What about you without a backup plan or emergency fund? You are stuck in a job you dislike but do not dare leave. You dare act for your future. Now I will give another example about Nam and a different version to show you the power of long-term investing because he has an emergency fund as a safety net. By age 40, Nam decides not to contribute further but to keep reinvesting the fund. All his other income now goes into trying his own business for the next 10 years from age 40 to 50, but life is not always smooth sailing. After 10 years at 50, Nam loses all his business capital due to market swings. Many in this situation might collapse, even go bankrupt. But Nam is different, because for those 10 years, while he tried business, his emergency fund kept earning 5% annually on its own, from 4.2 billion at age 40. By 50, the fund has grown to nearly 6.94 billion, 2.5 times his original capital. At 51, right when needed most, the fund becomes a lifesaver for the family. Nam can divide it to withdraw monthly. The result is surprising. Each month he receives about 578 million Vietnamese dong, huge amount compared to when he first saved 15 million monthly. But Nam does not spend it all. Each month, he only needs 30 million for his family. The rest he reinvests into a new 12-month account at 5% annual interest. And so, month after month, money comes in and money is reinvested. The latter keeps renewing itself like a non-stop wheel. And the surprise is, with a 6.94 billion fund, a 5% annual rate, and a 30 million monthly withdrawal, Nam can sustain it for nearly 66 years before depletion. In other words, he can realistically live his whole life off the cash flow from the emergency fund he picked. That is not even counting that Nam has paid social insurance for over 20 years, so with his fund he can still maintain until retirement and then receive a pension too. At that point, his cash flow is practically unlimited, enough to even support a sugar baby if he wanted. Here is something important many overlook. With a financial cushion, Nam is no longer bound by fear of what if I fail, what happens to my family. Thanks to the emergency fund, he freely embarked on entrepreneurship at 40. He could experiment, take risks more lightly because he knew if business failed, his family was safe. Your kids still studied, the family still has security, life remains stable. That is the true responsibility of a breadwinner. Responsibility is to working hard daily to bring money home, but also building a protective shield for the family against unforeseen events. And thanks to this cushion, Nam dares to live his life, try new things, without turning his whole family into co-gamblers. When you have a strong emergency fund, you not only buy safety for your family, but also buy yourself freedom to choose your path. And the difference between someone who just earns money and someone truly responsible for their family. Perhaps you were wondered, why can many billionaires risk investing in both fields, space tech, AI, to renewable energy, yet look calm, even excited? Because behind them there is always a huge safety cushion, foundational assets, steady cash flow, expert teams, robust financial systems, all allow them to experiment and take risks without fearing in. If I fail my family, or the common mistake is putting all income into one basket, pour in one business, one stock, or one channel, and hoping it succeeds. If it fails, the whole family bears the consequences. The difference lies in mindset. In investing, psychology is the most important factor. With a safety cushion like an emergency fund, you no longer decide from fear, but from calmness and thought. If successful, you multiply wealth. If not, you still have a foundation to stand again. That's what financially literate people do with an emergency fund. He can try business without making his family hostages in the game. And when he fails, his family is still safe. I learned this through years of working with venture capital funds and millionaire investors worldwide. I want to share this so you won't face such financial hardship and your family won't to suffer from your mistakes. A truly responsible person is not one who never fails, but one who prepares a safety cushion to protect the family against any failure. That's also why billionaires can take risks without worry. They don't bet their whole lives on one gamble. By now, you must see the big difference between normal saving and the deposit ladder strategy. Right? With normal saving, all money in one account, you'll be easily locked up, miss new interest rate opportunities, or lose almost all interest if you need urgent withdrawal. With the deposit ladder, you have flexible cash flow, something matures monthly while enjoying high long-term rates. In the long run, you build a big enough emergency fund to protect your family against any shock. Name a story proved mine. With just 15 million monthly, after 15 years, he had over 4.2 billion, and by year 25 it swelled to nearly 7 billion. Especially from year 16, Nam could receive steady cash flows of hundreds of millions monthly, enough to live comfortably, rest and spend time with family. In short, strategic saving is completely different from normal saving. One is money lying idle, the other is money working itself to protect and support you for life. Trust me, apply this and you are ahead of 90% of people financially. What do you think of this method? Are you ready to start building your own deposit ladder today? Leave your questions or experiences in the comments. And if you found this useful, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next podcast on personal finance and smart investing. In the next podcast, I will dive deeper into how to build an expense fund for essential costs effectively. Thank you for listening.